Welcome to my channel. 3 things to know about me before we get started. I have always got some kind of coffee on the go. I love crochet, which we're going to talk about in a second, of course, and I love colour. This is a granny square blanket that I've been making for my son. He's just about to turn 1. It's a mix of granny squares that spell out the letters of the alphabet, and I've got to finish putting it together, so I thought I could bring you along. Grab a coffee and let's get started. As you can probably tell, I've got no idea what I'm doing. This is my first YouTube video, so bear with me. Most of the squares come from this book called 3D Granny Squares, 100 Crochet Patterns for Pop-Up Granny Squares by Katie Moore, Shana Moore and Celine Siman. It's a really great book. It's got loads and loads of brilliant granny square patterns in it. And I did use some of the colours that were suggested because I love how colourful it is, and some of them I just did my own thing. And then a few of the squares I got from Etsy patterns, and then a couple of them I just made up because I couldn't find what I wanted. So there we go, that's where all the squares come from. Without further ado. Okay, so I lied. I have actually done one horizontal join here. I'm working from the bottom up, just because that made more sense to me. I don't really know why. And I also worked from the bottom up for the vertical lines because, let me just zoom in, I wanted the V's of the crochet to go downwards rather than upwards, because I just feel like that is the right way round. Again, don't ask me why. So I've got one horizontal join here, and I am doing single crochets on the edges. Some people like to do, there's loads of different ways you can join granny squares. You can do slip stitches, which means you don't get this ridge, but slip stitches take me forever, and it just feels easier for me to just do the action of single crochet. Let's move on to the next row of squares. So the next row is going to be joining these ones. So we've got X-ray for X with tree, just the way that the alphabet works out, because we've got the 26 letters of the alphabet, and then because I wanted it to be a rectangle, we've got 2 extras and then an R for the name of my baby boy. So let's get started. I'm gonna grab my white cotton yarn, which is what I'm using for this. We're going to join these edges. I'm going to go in on that inner loop and in on that inner loop. I'm going to grab the yarn, I'm going to pull it through, I'm going to create a chain to secure it, and then I'm going to do a single crochet in that same stitch just to start the row off, and then that's just what I'm going to do the whole way around. So again, put the crochet hook in that inner loop and that inner loop and single crochet. Now some people will do, we go in from the outside and in from the outside and then do it like that. I'm not going to do it like that because it takes me forever and it doesn't feel natural to me and I don't like it. So that's why I'm not doing it. So it may not be the standard method, but it's the method that works for me. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm literally just going under the stitches in the same way as you would normally single crochet along a row of stitches. Right, so I'm getting to the end of my square now, and you may not be surprised because of the name of my channel has got the word chaos in it, but my granny squares are, you'd be devastated to know, not always exactly the same size as each other. They may differ by 1 or 2 stitches. The reason for that is usually almost always, in fact, my error. When I'm following a pattern, I'll quite often you know, I'll realise that I've dropped a stitch or I've done too many stitches or something, and rather than frogging the whole thing, I just sort of think that's fine. I'll just sort it out when I come to to fixing it, when I come to joining it. So in the end, we've got one tiny extra stitch here. I don't know if you can even see it. We've got one tiny extra stitch here than we've got on the green. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a stitch in the same green stitch that I've already done, and that will have the effect of pulling this pink square to match up with the green edge, and that's it. So don't worry about being too precise. You'll quickly learn, if I continue with this channel and if you continue to watch me, that we don't do precise around here. We do chaos and bodging it in a way that it looks good enough. What's that saying? Perfect is the enemy of done. That's right. And as somebody that thought I used to have to always be, everything had to be perfect and I had to be a perfectionist and I couldn't ever show up and do things without being really good at them to start with, I've quickly learned in my adult life that life is a lot more fun if you just don't worry about being perfect, because no one's perfect. And my crochet patterns and crochet projects certainly are not perfect, but I always think actually with handmade stuff, that's part of the charm anyway, right? If you want it to be super perfect, then go and buy a machine made thing, and even they're not perfect, so you know, perfect doesn't exist. But okay, so I'm carrying on now. This is such a cute square, like it's a rainbow square. I really love it. Can you see that? This kind of goes that way around. It's funny because it was a square that I thought was going to be really baggy, because it seemed like it was really baggy, but actually it's been matching up with the other squares completely fine. So I think it's just maybe just the shape of it that makes it look baggy, and actually it's a perfectly good square size, so yay. Again, it seems like this blue square has got one more stitch on it than this square that I'm joining it to. So this time around, I'm just going to go into the extra stitch on the blue square and join it to a stitch on the pink square that I've already stitched into. When it's just one or two stitches like that, it's not going to make a difference. Obviously, if it was a massive difference, then to be honest, I'd probably redo the square. Like if I was finding that I'd done the pattern so wrong to the point where I was, you know, more than 3 stitches out. So say, you know, one granny square had 10 stitches and the other one somehow had 15, that they would be very different sizes. So I wouldn't bodge it. But if I've got a couple of stitches and no one except me is going to know, then you can't tell. So I just keep on doing it. There we go. Now I'm just going to keep on stitching. I actually don't know how many stitches are on each of these granny squares. Like, as I say, most of the patterns came from the same book. And one of the reasons I did that is not only because it's an amazing book with loads of patterns, but also because I wanted to make sure the squares were going to be the same size as each other, so it'd be easy to join them. Because obviously if I went and found granny square patterns from all over the internet, there's no guarantee that they would be the same size when I finished. There were a couple of patterns that I did get from different places, and so I had to check the gauge on them, which basically means I looked at what size hook and yarn they recommended and more or less like sized down. So like I say, I was using 3.5mm hooks, a 3.5mm or 4mm hook at a push for these squares that came out of the book, which is most of them. And if I found a pattern that said it was using, you know, a 5mm hook, then I would size it down appropriately. Maybe I'd use a 3 or a 4, and then do a couple of extra rounds so that the main pattern would be the right size, but maybe the square itself just needed to be a little bit bigger to make up for that difference, if that makes any sense. Because sizing up and down hooks and yarn are both ways that you can change your finished item. So I've come to the end of the row that we have joined horizontally. So we started over here with the pink and green and the light pink, and now we've gone all the way along here. So these granny squares are now joined, and I've reached the end, and I'm going to do a border around the whole thing. So I'm just going to cut this off using my trusty crochet snips. There we go. I'm just going to pull it through, and that's going to be a loose end for now, which I will sort out when we do the border. So slightly different camera angle. Let me just show you what we just did. So we just joined this row along here with this row. As you can see, it does create a little bit of a rise, a little bit of a ridge. If you wanted it to be completely flat, you'd have to do slip stitches instead of single crochet. What's going on here? Don't really know what's going on there. Might have to investigate that, possibly cut the yarn. I seem to have got some kind of random loop here. Love that for me. So yeah, this is what we've just done. Fun fact, this is actually the first blanket that I have finished. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm pretty close that I'm gonna finish it. Yeah, I don't know, I just work really well with the deadline. Like the fact that this is for my baby's first birthday, there's a very clear deadline there, so I have to finish it. Previous attempts at blankets here and on the door there, which you can't really see. Let me just move it slightly, that one there. There's a story behind each of them. These were the books that I read in 2025. Each of the colours is represents the cover of the book that I read. So that's not finished because it hasn't been made into anything. I mean, I guess it could technically be used as a blanket as it is now, but it hasn't got a fringe or a border or anything. And the same with this one. This one was my mood blanket from the year 2024, I want to say. There's even a blanket in here, which is also, I think, a mood blanket, possibly even from 2023. And that's in a bag because it's not even been joined. This is the only other thing that I've ever finished in terms of granny squares. This is a bag, as you can tell. So I've been crocheting for like, I want to say almost 6 years now. And I am not a blanket person. I just get really, really bored. Call it ADHD, call it lack of staying power, lack of discipline. I don't care what you call it, but I haven't finished a blanket up until now. So I'm actually super proud that I'm actually gonna finish this and put a border on it, and it's gonna be an actual thing. Again though, am I gonna use it as a blanket? Probably not, because we all know what toddlers are like with stuff that's around them. And frankly, I put in too many hours of work into this to give it to my soon-to-be toddler, and he's just gonna probably vom or spill something all over it or spit all over it or give it to the dog, and the dog will definitely destroy it. So to be honest, I might just use it as a piece of art and hang it up. I might give it to him as a blanket for his birthday present and then swiftly take it back off him. That is the problem with crocheting something like this, which has got loads of details and loads of like love and hours in it. It's like, actually I don't want to use it as a blanket because it's too nice. In the meantime, I'm going to carry on and I'll meet you when I am done. Apologies for the weird camera angle. I'm still figuring out which camera angle is going to work for this. It's quite good doing it during the daytime though, because I did debate whether to call my channel the Midnight Crafter, because so often I am, like many mums and parents out there, doing my crafts and my stuff when my baby's gone to bed and I'm trying to, you know, claw back the evening. So I'm quite often finishing up a bit of a project, you know, well past midnight, which obviously then I regret the next morning. But every crafter knows that feeling of just one more row, just one more stitch, just one more bit. I'm just going to finish this little section. And then before you know it, it's 2 a.m. and you're regretting all of your life choices, including the fact that you crochet in the first place. No, what am I saying? I always love it, never regret it. I do say though, and I genuinely believe this, that it's not a craft project, it's not a crochet project or a craft project, unless you lose the will to live halfway through. I genuinely do believe that. I think it's a sign that you're actually doing it right. Because I think that if you don't lose the will to live halfway through, then you're not putting enough effort into it. Or you're not sticking with it long enough to make the project any good. Again, as I go, I am doing my thing of correcting any extra stitches. So I'm holding my granny square with the corners like this, so I can hold one corner and one corner so I can see if there are any inconsistencies in their length, because it will bow out. This is actually pretty well matched, but with some of them it's kind of more obvious that there's extra stitches in one of them, so I'm just going to keep on going. Naming a YouTube channel or naming a business in general is wild. I did have a different name before, but it didn't really feel like me anymore, so I wanted to rebrand. And I came through loads of different names, like I literally was brainstorming it for weeks. Obviously landed on Colour Chaos Crafts, but again, I could have called myself the Midnight Crafter, but then I thought that maybe sounded a bit shifty, or like I was only going to be crocheting at midnight or something, or I only do like nighttime related projects or something, which isn't true, so I didn't do that. And then I also wanted to just call it like Colour Crafts or the Crafty Stitch, but then I thought maybe I wanted to do other crafts that are not just crochet and not just stitching, so then I wanted to broaden it out a bit. I mean, as I say, I love coffee, crochet, colour. I often say that crochet is what I do in between coffee and cocktails, just because I like the alliteration. But I will also say that crochet and crafting in general has been one of the things that has actually really saved my sanity in the postpartum period. Also before I had a baby, like I learnt to crochet in the COVID lockdown because I saw lots of adverts for creative crafts and crocheting on my Instagram feed when I was just, you know, like everyone, scrolling through Instagram endlessly during the pandemic. And I just thought, actually, that would be a really good craft. I could get my hands into it. I could make something from scratch. It's something that isn't on a screen. Ironically, you know, a lot of learning things nowadays is on YouTube, so it is on the screen, but you're not kind of like, you know, plastering your face up against the screen. You know, it is actually like a tactile craft. You know, you're doing something physically rather than just digitally. So that's something that really appealed to me about it as well. And so it really saved me during lockdown and gave me a focus, gave me something new to learn. And that was really great for my mental health. As somebody that has struggled with my mental health, I struggle with depression and anxiety. I was really prepared to get postpartum depression after I had my baby. I really thought that it would be something that would affect me. I'm really lucky that it didn't. I will say that it's nothing that I particularly did. Anybody that has postpartum depression or knows someone that has it will know that it's not something that you know, can decide whether you get or not, like all depression, like all mental health illnesses. But I am very lucky. I think one of the reasons that I didn't get it is because, well, my baby was healthy. He was a pretty easy baby at first. Don't hate me, don't hate me. He's had sleepless nights and things since then. And I also have a really good support system around me. I've got my parents close by and my partner is really helpful. You know, he's a really great dad. So, yeah, I was really lucky that I didn't get really bad postpartum depression after I had my boy. However, I will say that crochet has been something that I have tried to continue to do, even at a slower, much slower level, speed, I should say, than before. And that's actually been so key, because it has been such a fantastic way of me keeping in touch with things that I love, and a way of making me feel like my identity is still important, and that I still have things that are just for me. It's so important to have something that isn't just about you being a mum. But if I'm honest, you know, I won't say that I forget that I'm a mum when I'm crocheting, obviously, but it is like an escape. It is like something that I love. It's something that I did before I became a mum. I'm really, really lucky that I have this room, this space where I can have my yarn, my colours. You know, I've got my easel here where I can block things. I've got a printer where I can kind of print out stuff for my Etsy shop. And I really, really appreciate that. And I do think that having something that is creative, that is something that really nourishes your soul, not to get too woo-woo about it, but you will learn if you carry on watching this channel that I do sometimes get a little bit woo-woo, a little bit mental healthy. As I say, I've struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life, and at one point it got really bad. So I'm always talking about things that help my mental health, and I think it's actually really important to talk about, and I think that it's important to emphasize the role that crafting and creating things from scratch, and especially being able to choose colors and different patterns and designs that you love and that make your heart happy. I really actually think that's really important. And crochet is not just about, you know, having something to do with your hands while you're watching TV or whatever. It's also, for me, about nourishing my soul, making me feel creatively inspired and fulfilled, right? So long story short, crochet has really helped me with all of those things. And that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. And so going back to my original point, I did struggle to know what to name my channel and my business, because I thought, oh, well, I could call it something that speaks more to the mental health side of things, you know, like, I don't know, mental health makes, or you know, or talk about the fact that I'm a mum. Maybe I could call it Mama Makes, or Mama Makes Magic, or, you know, something like that. And I just thought, actually, do you know what? It's not just about the fact that I'm a mum, and it's not just about the fact that it helps my mental health. It's about all of these things. The thread, pun not intended, running through all of this is that actually it's always just a little bit chaotic, but it's also very colourful. And I am happiest when I am colourful, embracing the chaos, and doing the crafts. So that's why I arrived at Colour Chaos Crafts. So yeah, that's that little story. Let me know if you resonate with any of that though. Drop me a comment or come and talk to me on Instagram. Yeah, let me know. Let me know how crafting or crochet, if you're doing this, if you're doing a project as you're watching, or if you have also discovered a craft or crochet or something similar during a difficult moment in your life. So often I think I don't have anything in common with someone, and we're just sort of doing surface level chat. And then, you know, I start talking about my crochet, because I do. I just go on, as you can tell, I like to chat. Oh, quick pause for coffee. I will be talking to someone and I'll say, you know, so what are you excited about at the moment? I'm excited about the fact that I'm doing this blanket for my boy or whatever. And then that quite often will open up the conversation that goes way beyond surface, and I'll find out that they've got a craft, or that they're learning cross stitch, or that they're learning how to watercolor paint, or, you know, they also crochet and they're learning this stitch, or they're making this project for their friend's baby or whatever. And before you know it, you're into really knowing what makes that person tick, or talking to someone about something that they're actually really excited about. And I think that's where the magic happens, isn't it? Like, that's where you really get to know people, where you can share what's going on in your life. Right, so I finished another row, and I'm gonna snip off the end, pull it through. So let's see how that goes. I'm always scared when I do this that like I've accidentally crocheted the wrong squares together and I'm gonna have to unpick the whole thing. But no, I think we're good. Oh, I missed it. I missed a row. I went from doing this row. I went from doing this, joining these, to joining these. And I didn't join these here. Okay, well, guess I'm doing that next. 2 more to do. So we've got these squares that need to join together. 3 more to do. These squares that need to join together. And this row that I've just missed that needs to join together. Awesome. It is another day. This is what the blanket looks like now. So we have done all the horizontal joins, and what you can now see at the bottom are the threads dangling because I need to finish the edge. And I have actually started doing a single crochet border all the way around. One thing that I will say about doing the border is that at first I was doing it with the granny squares facing away from me. So if you notice, I've got the granny squares with the right side. This is the back, what you can see here is the back. With the right side facing towards me, and I'm crocheting in that direction. When I first started doing the single crochet border, I started it kind of opposite. So I started it sort of this way with the back facing towards me, and then I was crocheting the opposite direction. And then I realized that what was happening is that I could see these sort of like legs that you can see on the back here, like V shapes. And that is normally what you would consider to be the back of a single crochet. And what I wanted was the V's, sort of nice, neat V's, to be at the front. So I did quickly realize that and ripped out, and I started again. So that was a little bit of a 1 step forward, 1 step back that I took before I decided that I was going to do it this way around. So I have changed the camera angle because I wanted to show you what I'm doing when I get to the end of one of the lines that I've already done. So I've done the join along here and it's finishing up here. And as I showed you earlier, I've just cut the yarn and just left the tail kind of hanging at the end there. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that those bits are connected to the end border, because I could just kind of crochet around it like that and the border would be fine, but this would still sort of be loose. Like as you can see here, it's sort of like not attached, it's still sort of like loose. So what I actually want to do is I'm going to put my crochet hook in to the top of that border somehow. I mean, I'm not even really doing it in any particular way, but I'm making sure that my crochet hook is, I'm going to have to kind of really push it in there to get into the V, but I'm basically making sure that my hook is also taking in the top stitch of that final line there. And it is a bit janky and I am having to really sort of wiggle it around. But now when I secure that stitch, you can see that this bit here is not kind of wiggling around loose like it was. It's like secured into it. I am going to still have to sew this end in, and I am going to have to make sure that it's properly secured, but I think that that's going to make a neater finish on the final product. Another thing that I should point out is as I'm doing this border, I'm only doing the back loops of the stitches, going in just the back loop. See this like V of the stitches here. Each stitch is made up of these 2 legs, 1, 2. And if I was going to do the whole stitch, I would just like literally put my crochet hook under both of the loops. One, you can see 1, 2, and that would be perfectly fine, but it would create a different effect, because if you're doing just the back loop, you get this kind of ridge of these stitches here. And I think it just looks neater because you can see the edge of the granny square, because you get this kind of neat edge here. Okay, so the sun has decided to come out through the clouds as I'm filming this section, obviously. But I thought that now that I finished the single crochet border, I thought I would show you the entire blanket as much as I can anyway at this camera angle. So starting with A, we've got all of the squares going all the way down to Z, zebra for Z. And then we've got the 2 spare squares at the bottom to make it into a proper rectangle. So I think it's looking pretty cool. Like, it's very textured, very colourful, and yeah, I guess I could show you what each of the squares are now more easily. So we've got apple, bear, cake, dog, egg, fox, gift, heart, island, jellyfish, kiwi, lion. Then we got a star here, a shooting star here for magic, M for magic, which I thought was quite cute. Night is inspired by a certain romantasy book that has 3 stars above a mountain. So let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about there. So N for night, orange panda. Question for Q. That was another one I wasn't sure what to do. There's not that many kind of good words that you can do for Q. So I decided to do a question mark for Q for question. Rainbow, sunflower, tree. This was a square that I made up myself. I couldn't find a pattern for a tree that really stood out to me. And I didn't want to do, there was a pattern for a terrapin, really random, that I saw that didn't make sense to me. I was like, who the heck knows what a terrapin is? Not me. Also because my baby loves looking up at the trees. Umbrella, vanilla, ice cream, W, watermelon, X for x-ray, another one that's quite hard to find a good granny square for. I guess I could have done something like xylophone, but that would have been really complicated. So I've just done a bone that is kind of broken in half in black and white to kind of show X for x-ray. I did a yacht for Y, and then, as I said, zebra for Z. So I still have the ends to sew in, as you can see. Still got a few ends that need doing, but yeah, we are the most finished with the blanket than we have ever been in any of my blanket projects in my life thus far. So I'm quite pleased with that. I could put some tassels on the bottom to make it sort of even more blankety tassely. And then I think we might be done. So the way that I do tassels is I'll use the same hook that I used for the project and the same kind of yarn. And then what I'll do is I'll go to the bottom edge and then I'll measure out how long I want the tassel to be. So this is the bottom edge of the blanket. So if I wanted the tassels to be more or less the same height as the squares off the end, like here, then I would measure out double the square, because if you imagine their tassel's going to be looped at the top, so you need it to be double the actual length. So I would then pick up the yarn there, and that then is the entire length that I need. So it's actually quite long from here to here. And then I would do it 3 times. So that length once, twice, and 3 times. And then I'll cut that length of yarn, and it is folded at 2 ends, that end and this end. And then because I want it to be half, I will half it like that. So now we've got a loop of yarn. I'm going to go to the first bit of the blanket where I want a tassel to be, which is going to be this first stitch here. Put my hook through like I would normally under the entire stitch, hook the tassel here, pull it through, and then let go of the hook using my fingers, make a loop and pull through like that, and then just tighten it up, and then you've got your first tassel on the bottom. And then I'm just going to do the exact same thing for nearly every stitch. I probably won't need to do it for every single stitch along here because it will be too tight. That just about covers maybe 1.5 stitches. So I'll see how I go, but I'll do that for the entire length, and then that will be the tassels for the border. And then I'll show you how I cut them so that they're all the same length and we get a really nice, neat tassel-y edge.
So voiceover Hannah coming on here. So I am showing you that the sunflower is a little bit floppy, and blocking is going to straighten everything out, make it all lie beautifully and flat. I'm using a handheld steamer, which is just a normal steamer that heats up and then creates steam, turning it on and then just literally almost ironing it so that the fibres lay flat. I have just got my tape, and what I do is I'm literally going to use the straight edge of the tape to try and get as straight an edge on my fringe as I can. So I'm going to pull out a length of tape using the blocking boards as a guide, this blue bit, this blue line here, and then I'm going to tape it down just below the line, and then I'm going to get these fabulous dressmaker scissors, which I love, and I have banned everyone in my house, my husband, I'm talking about my husband, let's be honest, from using these for anything apart from cutting fabric and cutting yarn, because they are so sharp and they are incredibly satisfying to use. And let me show you. And there we go. Very exciting.
I am so pleased if you watched this video. As I say, it is my first video on this channel and pretty much ever on YouTube properly. I'm definitely going to be back with more projects, more crochet, more crafts. They're not all going to be as epic as this one, but I'm definitely going to be doing some more blankets and amigurumi and kind of challenging myself. If I have an idea, can I make it in crochet? Can I just have a crazy idea and make it happen? Who knows? But I'd love to have you along with me. I'd love to just sit, craft, chat and drink coffee with you. If that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, please come along, like, subscribe and share. I'd be so happy to have you here in this little corner of the internet that I'm hoping to grow. And I hope that this serves as a reminder that even if your life very often feels in complete chaos, you can still find joy in colour and crafting and coffee. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.